Hey, I'm Scottie and thanks for joining me. In this tutorial, I'm going to share with you 3 secrets to sketching people in crowds, which is really important because it can give your sketch some real depth. So this is the reference that my patrons helped me choose. So we're focusing on sketching from a street perspective. So this isn't from the top window of a building or from a drone above people. We're focusing on the rules for sketching people in groups from ground level. So the first point we need to talk about is the horizon line. So I've made this little template here to help explain it. So if a person is sketching standing position, or they've got a camera and they've taken a photo of this scene, then so every single head here you can see is roughly in line. So that means that the photo was taken at eye level. And that line there you can see here in my template is the horizon line. And you'll notice that the smaller the figure here, the further they are back. So in this version here, I've rearranged the figures on the template. If you were to take a photo at ankle height, or if you were sketching lying down, then everybody's ankles would be roughly the same height. And it would be the same if you were sitting, everybody's waists would be about the same height. So that's an important secret to sketching people in crowds, is working out where the horizon line is. And then whenever you add a figure, you know that you have to match that certain point on that horizon line. And then depending how big you make the figure is how far away it is from you or how close it is. So if I was to plan this out on my sketchbook here, I would start with having a think about where the horizon line is. So we've seen from that template that I've done, the eye line is about here. So let's do a bit of planning. Let's put a dot here and then equal distance down a dot here. I'm not sure how big the sketch will go, so I'm just putting them out there. And I can imagine a line there. So now we know where the horizon line. The next most important thing is to start with the foreground and make our way back. So let's start with the figure on the bike. And I will put that person, so I know that the head has to be between those 2 dots. So I'll put a dot here, and I want it to come down to roughly here. We can roughly plan that a figure is about 8 heads high, and on a bike it might be slightly more. So if I make the head about that big, let's see if that fits. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes, so that will fit in the page. We'll start with the head here so that we can measure the rest of the body off it. So we'll just silhouette this main shape of the head. Just keep it very simple. You can take your time there. Okay, have a bit of hair coming out there. So there's the head. We won't go into too much detail. Now, because we have the head size, it's much easier to plan the rest of the figure. What we can do is put a dot here for that shoulder and a dot here for that shoulder. And I'm just referencing it off the reference and making sure that you could imagine that about a head or just a bit smaller than a head width here to each shoulder point. Now from this point we can go down 3 heads. So I'm measuring from here to here just roughly. 1, 2, 3. And that is approximately where the crotch is. So that's where he's sitting. And I'll put another dot here. Okay, so it's another 3 heads down to the ankle, but because he's got his leg bent, we're going to go 1.5 to the knee and then 1.5 to the ankle, because the knee is about halfway. So we go 1.5, that's about there, or maybe he's down here. So with dots you can just adjust it if I do it wrong, and then another 1.5. Okay, so that's where the top of the shoe, the ankle is, and the top of the boot. And then we can come down here and I can see it will just fit on the page nicely. So that's our plan. Now let's get the main shapes. It gives me more confidence having this plan because I know that the jacket is going to be roughly the right size. So I'll just go around this shape. This is the bag shape. This is zip. And it comes down here and that's the seat. And then the rest of the jacket comes here and in there. We can do that arm shape. So from the shoulder to the elbow is another 1.5 heads, just like the knee, just there. It kind of comes around to that point where the crotch is. So now once again, let's just outline that roughly. Nice expressive lines. So that's where the elbow was. Okay. Do some corrections. Okay. Now we go down to the knee. Oops. So the knee was about there. And then the other leg there. So we go. So I'm not focusing on those details, I'm just trying to get those shapes, 1, 2, 3, 4. And now the boots. Okay, just rough there. Now that I've got the figure, that's the hardest part, especially this figure because it's the focus of the whole sketch. Now let's go to some other shapes that we need to do. So I love this basket. It's really nice feature to this bike. So let's outline this basket. Just a general shape there. And the next thing we can do is the wheels. That is one of the trickiest things. So I'm going in line with that ankle, just back a little bit. That's the middle of the wheel there. Okay, and then we go across here. There's a line here. Sort of follows that line of that basket there. I'm going to go at the middle of the basket. Okay, that's another line. Now I'll draw a dot for the bottom of the wheel. And we can see here that it's not a circle, not a straight circle, it's an oval. A dot there, then equal distance above. Okay, that really helps. And if you like, we can even, because it's an oval shape, put 2 dots like that. We can just go slowly around those shapes like that. And up. And there's lots of main shapes here too. Okay, and then this other one. So about the same distance here and here. And that'll help us again. We get the same width. Can look back. Yep. Always check. And obviously this isn't perfect, but just getting it in the ballpark. With a loose sketch like this. Okay. And let's do the same on this side. Just run a rough line there, even if it's overlapping like that. Gives it nice interest. Okay, and now we've got these other main shapes around the body. Now we can add in the rest of the structure of the bike. Like that, and there's the line here. Sort of more outlining things than trying to get all those details right. To there. Okay. And then this front bit. The handlebars. Just having a guess there, really. So now we've done most of the main shapes. We're going to break it up further with some medium-sized shapes. So I have this bag, which I still haven't done, but generally it's great if you can simplify and keep these shapes to the end, just like that. And I'm purposely going over there to give it a bit of looseness. What else can we break up? And there's a line here. Oh. Okay. Now this is really adding details. There we got this lines there. And we can add some very, very quick lines here. Very light lines. And because the light's only really shining off a few of them, you can't really see them very distinctly, so we won't put too much effort into that. And I want to add a bit more detail onto the helmet, so that you know it is a helmet. Might block in a few things a bit darker there. And make sure there's a distinctive dark section here. To say that is a helmet. Setting a few little details around. Okay, So there we have the bike. I probably should have done it a bit higher there so I wasn't so close to the page. Okay, now we're adding our second figure here on the left. Now where do we add it? Now it's important to keep in mind the horizon line because it's easy to forget, and we could just put the figure here, but that wouldn't be right. It has to go up here so that the heads are roughly in line. But it always depends how tall a person is, so sometimes they might be off. You can see the person right in the back is a very tall man, so his head sticks up above the line, but the lady standing next to him would be shorter than the line. So this person here I'm going to put roughly about there. Okay, and I want her head to be a little bit smaller than this person. So if I was to draw a head really big, then the body would come all the way down here. So I want it to be smaller so that the bottom of her feet will come to about there. So if I roughly break this up, this half, and then half, and then half, that's about 8 heads. So that the head has to be quite small there to get down to this point. So let's start off with the top of her head, and just roughly outlining the hair here. And then we come down for the forehead. And we won't try and outline this whole bit, we'll just show some of the details like that. I'm just trying to get the shape there, the general shape of the face. Now we can do the same thing. We can put a dot here for the shoulder, and we know 1, 2, 3. So that would be the crotch. And then we can double that down for the ankles. So I'm going to come nicely, quite nicely up to about there. So now let's make our way down those shapes. So this is the front of that jacket, which has got a nice warm scarf on. And instead of going all the way around the figure, we'll come around this side. And we know the crotch is down here. So we go down 3 heads down to the crotch, which is about there, and then 3 down to the ankles, which is here. But halfway between, so 1.5 heads, is about the knee, and that's where that jacket comes to. Okay, like that. Then we can draw from the knee down to the ankles. And the other one and a bit, so about to there. Just following that silhouette of that boot. Might be a bit big, but okay. Oh. Okay, and then the bag. Okay, now let's put in the arm. So the shoulder was here, and then 1.5, so the elbow would be about there, and then the arm would come down to here. And there's a belt across this bit. Now we're adding in, dividing the shapes up. And once we've done that, we can add some more details. And on the face, we can just adjust a few more of these things. Little details. So now we're going to move on to all the figures in the background there, and that leads me to my next most important tip, which is to simplify. So there's figures in the background. We're not going to sketch them in the same way we did here. We're just going to keep it to the main shapes, medium shapes, and not go into the details. Okay, so once again, if I was to do this man here, it doesn't go down here, it goes in line with the other heads, maybe slightly higher because he's a very tall person. So it goes here. And I'm not even going to measure this person out. It's just going to be based on the size of his head. It has to be smaller than her head. So let's just draw the outline of the head here. So there's the head, and we can divide that up like that. And his shoulders come down here. So we're just going either side of the body, outlining those shapes. And that's about halfway. We can divide up some of the medium shapes here like that, but I'm not going to add stripes in there, And the face, you could leave the face blank there, but let's add a little bit of detail. So what I do is where the eyes are, so we're just adding a little bit where the shadows are. So draw like a little eyebrow and then a little line down to where his eye is. And then just a hint of a nose, maybe even just one side of the nose. And then where the mouth is. And then because we did that, we'll add a bit on the sides. So it's really just impressionistic. Okay, so the lady next to him, slightly shorter, but a similar size head. Okay, so that's the head there. And she looks like she's crossing her arms. Like that. So I'm just basing this generally just from observation, looking at that size, comparing it to this size. And then the boots come down. She's got her feet together. And I'm trying to see what the arm is doing here. It looks like it's going in here, and then you can see a bit of the hand, and the other arm is going underneath. Just perhaps a line like that. Little line for the eyebrow, kind of connected to the eye bit, and then the nose. And I wasn't so happy with the mouth there, so I'm going to just leave that out on the lady here. And then I like this guy on the side, so I'll bring him over. I might not do the girl walking holding the paper. And he's about here, and so you see his head height, so I keep it in line, but I want it to be smaller than that head, but larger than that head. So I might make it this big. Okay. So that's the beanie. That's the head. Okay. Now we could do some dots because this figure is a bit bigger. There, and then 1, 2, 3. So that's the crotch, and then we can double that distance down to here. So one leg is here, and the other leg is kind of bent up there. So we've got 3 heads, crotch, 3 heads, and then the shoes will be down there. Gives us a bit of a plan. So we'll go to outline this bag on the back. Okay, that's that section there. And then we're going into the legs. So in between that dot and that dot is the knee. So go down like that. Angles back in a bit. And then what's happening on the other side? Legs bent like this, and then bent back. That's the other ankle. Now the shoes. And this one, of course. Might break that up a bit further. See the sole of the shoe is flat there. It comes back up. Now we can divide this silhouette into medium shapes. So like this. You can add little gaps here and there. Like we don't need to connect all the lines. And I'm pretty happy with that figure. So now let's draw these 2 figures over here. They're about the same size as those figures. So fighting the temptation to bring them down here, they should be roughly in line again. And they're about the same height as that lady. So let's bring them here. Might go into that middle of the sketchbook page there. So it's easier when you're drawing smaller figures just to rough out these shapes. Let's get that silhouette. And then that's from there to there, about double down. Like that. Let's get this here. Okay, that's very, very simple, isn't it? Then the next head is about right on the line. Same waist is about there. And then double down from the crotch about there to the top of the ankles. Okay, flat shoe there. And the other one, you can't really see that shoe. Make those details a bit crisper. I may as well do those two figures here just because it's coming across the page anyway. So, yeah, again, you always want to draw them a bit lower, but keep looking at that eye line and making sure that we've got the two figures in the right perspective. It's about that head there, and then we'll just pop in the other head. Down, I can match the other figures there, and this is more of an abstract figure. So now double that down to there, the lower half of the body. And then the legs, just trying to keep a nice silhouette of those figures. Shoes. And are they holding a bag? There's a bag there. Come in to the waist and then down to the knees with this jacket she's wearing, and the leg comes out. So you get that dynamic movement, making sure the legs have a nice bend in them. Okay, and then let's get some division in these smaller shapes. Might have to bring the arm down a little bit more. So there you go, that's how you sketch people in a crowd. The three secrets that we talked about was to figure out where the horizon line was, and that's in the planning stage, and then start with the foreground figure and then make your way back to the people in the background. Then the third secret is to make sure that the figures in the foreground are very detailed, and then the figures in the background are very basic, only minimal details. And that's how you can create a really great scene of a crowd of people that has depth and interest and keeps your eye moving around the scene. So I recommend you try that out. The reference here and the templates are all going to be put up on Patreon, and I'll also be putting this watercolor process that I'm doing, going through all the light shapes and the shadows and adding some nice highlights on top. I'll be going through that in depth on my Patreon page. I'll upload it there. But I've got lots more tutorials like this. You could check this one out here below. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.